So tonight I went to go see Deadpool 2, directed by David Leitch, the sequel to the awesome and groundbreaking original Deadpool back from 2016. So the way I'm going to structure this review is we're going to get all of the non-spoiler stuff out of the way at the beginning of this video, and then I'll get into the spoiler stuff later, but I'm going to give you a warning. So if you have not seen the film, I'll talk about, my non-spoiler review, whether or not I think you should see it, and things of that nature first, right? And then I'll give you a warning, plenty of time before we delve into spoilers, okay? So, non-spoiler review. I liked the movie. Honestly, it was a bigger, grander film. There were more characters. It was less of a personal movie like the first Deadpool was, and really more of a grandiose type of thing. And even though the film really didn't develop Deadpool as much as it did in the first movie, because that was kind of all about him, they did add some development to the character, and the movie still kind of focused on Wade Wilson's relationships, not just with, Vanessa, but also with other people he meets throughout the movie. Without going into spoilers, it really was Wade Wilson's story. So the movie stars, obviously Ryan Reynolds is back as Deadpool, Wade Wilson. Josh Brolin is here as Cable, fresh off of being in the biggest movie of all time, Infinity War as Thanos. He is now going to be another badass Cable. Also Morena Baccarin, Julian Dennison, Zazie Beetz, Brianna Hildebrandt, TJ Miller, and some very surprising cameos from some pretty big stars. But you're probably wondering, okay, should I see this movie? If you like the first Deadpool, and if you like comic book movies, yes. And you probably will go see it. I don't even think you have to have me tell you that. Is it as good as the first movie? Honestly, I still like Deadpool 1 more than Deadpool 2. I felt like the issue with Deadpool 2 is that it's very ambitious and it tries a lot of new things, which I think were very, very cool. It is kind of an artistic type of movie in many ways. Even though it's very vulgar, this is like with the first movie. You're not going to expect anything different here. Tons of violence, very gory stuff, lots of profanity. So it's definitely not a film that you want to take little kids to, but you can expect that here. And it retains that, but also it's a very artistic film. The way it's shot, the way it's edited, the way some of the sequences go, it's really well done. Very good cinematography. So even as a film fan or as a fan of comic book movies, it feels very different from any other comic book movie. It's just like with the first one. So that's a good thing. I felt like the jokes in the first one were better. In my opinion, with Deadpool 2, some of the jokes were really funny. Some of them were not that funny and just did not hit with me at all. And then there were some that I found funny that others may not have. What you have to understand about this movie going into it is that it's very, very meta. And if you're familiar with the Deadpool character, both theatrically as well as in the comic books, he often breaks the fourth wall. So you're going to have little jokes in this movie here and there referencing other movies. And I don't just mean other movies like, other comic book movies in the Fox X-Men universe, because that's definitely, this is in the same universe. That's definitely referenced. But also he references other cinematic universes. DC is referenced. The MCU is referenced. Other films, Star Wars is referenced. And what I found very interesting is they actually reference the comic books. There's a scene where Deadpool runs into a character, and he's like, dude, I totally loved you in Uncanny X-Men issue number, yada, yada, yada. And that's just what Wade Wilson, what Deadpool is at this point. You should know that. And it's funny. It works, and it only works for this character. There are not many other movies with many other characters that could pull this off. Even though Spider-Man's also like the wisecracking guy in red, like Deadpool, Spider-Man never really breaks the fourth wall. He's in his own world, whereas Deadpool kind of knows he's in a movie over and over and over again. He is the narrator of the film, Ryan Reynolds, and it's his story. But overall, the action sequences in this film I thought were better than the first movie. I thought it was a bigger movie, more characters, bigger set pieces, bigger fights. But I still think that overall I liked the first movie more because I just liked the story in it. And it didn't even have the best plot, the first Deadpool did, but it had a good enough plot and a good enough story. And it was so refreshing when it first came out that it really kind of stands up. Whereas this one being a sequel, not really a huge step down. I'm not saying I didn't like the movie because I did enjoy it, but I just liked the first one a little bit more. Now, special effects wise, I thought the movie kind of came off a bit cartoony, but I think that may have been the intention. There are some characters in this film that are pretty much entirely CGI, and when you're watching it, it just kind of reminded me of some really bad CGI from movies from 10 to 15 years ago. Like, there are some parts of the movie, it wasn't quite as bad as Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and the Scorpion King in Mummy Returns. That was some of the worst CGI ever. It wasn't that bad, but there were certain scenes that you could just tell were just CGI. But what's funny is the movie makes reference to it being CGI. So again, it's almost like their way out is by having self-referential humor. It's like because the film is so self-aware, you know, they kind of give you a wink, like, yeah, we know we're doing this and we're aware of it, so it makes it okay. And in some ways, it does make it okay. But it is still a bit distracting, but I don't think it took me out of the movie at all. I don't think it did. The characters are all pretty likable and pretty relatable. There is some time travel shenanigans. Now, I want to talk about Cable real quick, okay? First of all, Josh Brolin was Cable. Every time I heard him talk, I heard Thanos. It's like the same voice. He didn't change his voice at all. It's Thanos in this freaking movie. And if you're expecting a backstory, if you're expecting that this story of Cable is going to conclude here and then it's going to tell you the whole backstory, it's not. We found out recently that Josh Brolin signed, I think, a 4-film deal to play Cable. So the story of Cable is not told in this movie at all. There's a little bit of a backstory, very little, but the whole thing about him being Nathan Summers and Cyclops and Jean Grey or whatever, the relationship there, Mr. Sinister, there are teases to a lot of this stuff and hints. And that's one thing I will tell you is that if you're a fan of either comic books or comic book movies, there are tons, I mean tons of Easter eggs all throughout this movie, top to bottom, not just with jokes, but also with background humor and set pieces and whatnot. And, you know, there are things where you see it as a comic book fan. You're like, hey, I know what that is. So you'll get tons of that in this movie. But back to the character of Cable, I liked the way that Brolin portrayed him. I thought it was absolutely a treat that Josh Brolin as Cable is in this movie. And he's the only character that's really super serious. I would say him and Colossus are the only characters that are, like, really, really serious. Like, they think this is actually real, whereas everything's a joke to Wade Wilson, you know, except for one thing, which I'm not going to spoil, which is a big driving force behind the narrative of this film. But I enjoyed it. I really did have a fun time. There are some parts where I thought the pacing was a bit weird. It's like too fast at the beginning, then too slow, then fast again. Little things like that I can criticize, but it didn't ruin the movie for me. It really didn't. The only thing that I'm a little, I guess, I don't want to say concerned, but the only thing that I'm a little iffy on is sort of like what happens close to the end of the movie, and how I worry that many other movies are going to be doing this kind of Deus Ex Machina, I guess you can say. It's something that I'm not looking forward to in comic book movies. But that being said, there are some big surprises in this film, not just, you know, cameos, but there's actually one character that I wasn't expecting, but they hinted at him for at least during the second act. And then I was like, could it be him? And then it was him, and I loved it. I loved it so much, and it was super, super accurate to the comics. Not super accurate, but close enough. Fun movie. I'm wondering where they're going to go from here. I know that X-Force was talked about, but with the Disney purchase, I don't know what's going to happen with that. They're going to change all that if that gets finalized. But if you like Deadpool 1, if you like comic book movies, go see it. I mean, it really is worth going to see. It's definitely not a movie that you probably should skip on. It really isn't, because there's a lot of good stuff in the movie and a lot of surprises that you're probably not expecting. So, non-spoiler review is over. We're going to go into spoilers right now, okay? So I'm going to give y'all a little bit of a chance. Click off the video if you have not seen the film. When you do go see it, come back and we'll talk about spoilers, okay? So that is your warning, spoiler time, all right? I was shocked when they killed off Vanessa Carlyle so early in the movie. And also, you know, the mid-credit scene later on that they kind of bring her back to life, you know, I was very happy when I saw it, but I was just shocked that she died at the beginning of the film. But it makes sense because it is what drives Wade Wilson to do his thing. So, Colossus versus Juggernaut was awesome, but like Deadpool said, you know, oh, it's CGI. I thought that was freaking cool, and I marked out for Juggernaut, because when he punches the bottom part, like the floor of the bus, or whatever, that big like that transport thing, I was like, is it Juggernaut? Is it Juggernaut? And it was, and he was wearing the correct helmet. And there's that awesome scene where he talks about Xavier. He's like, yeah, my brother, you know, I wear it to protect myself from him. Loved it. I loved it so much. Russell Collins, otherwise known as Firefist, you know, is the kid who's kind of the main, I guess, the main MacGuffin of the film. And there's a lot of jokes in here about how people view superheroes, and not just in Deadpool, but other universes, other cinematic universes. I loved him in the movie. I thought he was a little hammy at times, to be honest, but I thought it was still an effective performance, and it kind of reminded me of X-23. Not as good, but, you know, and I also loved the little reference to Logan, how Wade Wilson's pissed off because Logan, like, you know, he died, and, you know, damn it, you took my spotlight. You did the R-rated thing after me. I love that so very much. And I actually really enjoyed those mid-credit scenes. Like when they had Deadpool go back in time and kill Ryan Reynolds before he did Green Lantern. That was freaking classic, dude. They killed off the Deadpool from X-Men Origins Wolverine. They showed freaking... they showed huge jacked man in there. That was cool. And let me tell you something right now. I popped so hard when they showed freaking James McAvoy and Nicholas Hoult and all them, you know, playing the classic X-Men in that one scene. Dude, I was actually kind of hoping more for like Patrick Stewart and Kelsey Grammer, but that was freaking awesome that they were there. Oh, I loved it so much. I thought it was so funny. And I was shocked that they had killed off the X-Force so early, because one thing they did do in this movie that I didn't like is what they did to Shatterstar. I like Shatterstar in the comics. I did not like what they did in the movie at all. I thought it was kind of like, damn, like they kind of wasted him. They made him into this punk, but he came back to life at the end with the time reversal, so they might fix it for the sequels. Also, I was shocked that Terry Crews and Brad Pitt had made cameos. I try to stay away from the news about this movie. They were awesome, dude. Bedlam, and then, you know, The Vanisher. I thought that was freaking cool. I really enjoyed that. And Bill Skarsgård, a.k.a. It, from Stephen King's It movie, was Zeitgeist. That was kind of a cool little cameo right there. It's almost like the movie's like, hey, look at all these important people. We're going to throw them in here for fun. And I was also surprised that Black Tom Cassidy got jobbed out like that. I mean, I wonder if they're going to bring him back. It was cool seeing him, but it was like, man, it's kind of a wasted character if you ask me. Same thing with Negasonic Teenage Warhead. Like, I thought she could have done more in this movie. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad she didn't, because, you know, they had to give more of a focus on some of the other characters. So that was fine. I was fine with that. No, overall, I mean, I enjoyed the movie. I don't think I'm going to be rewatching it frequently like I did like Civil War and you know, Infinity War. But it was fun. Again, some of the jokes in the movie just didn't hit, at least not with me, and I'm just kind of fighting with myself here. Like, you know, should I say that the movie had too much self-referential humor? Maybe. And maybe they did go too far, but it was still effective, you know. And again, some of the jokes were a bit predictable as well. That's one thing I will tell you, is that some of them were predictable. Overall, though, it was not a bad little movie. I enjoyed it. I think it's going to get tremendously overshadowed by Infinity War, because Infinity War is just too big. But Deadpool 2 was cool. Like, it was a cool time. And I do hope they continue to make these movies. I want to see Deadpool 3. I want to see more X-Men movies. I really love the X-Men cast. Like, I just love the you know, obviously there's a couple bad movies, but I love the X-Men movies, and I hope we get more of them, maybe with Deadpool, you know. But I do love the joke of, man, we couldn't even get them in this movie, you know, aren't they going to spend more of a budget? Like, that kind of stuff popped me. A lot of the jokes were like, you had to know about the movie industry to get the jokes. So, I mean, some of this stuff may have to be explained. Now, there are, like I said, time travel shenanigans here, because the story here is that Cable, you know, going back in time and having Firefist not do what he is supposed to do has pretty much, you know, it creates a time paradox, because if he had not gone back in time to stop the kid, once the kid gets stopped, he would never go back in time. See what I'm saying? And the thing is with time travel stories is you really have to let it go, because everything in time travel stories are time paradoxes. That's what they are. So it's just really, I don't want to criticize it, even though it is something worth talking about in the review. But it's still one of those things where, like, yikes, man. Like, you know, I don't think it's worth criticizing the film because the time travel made no sense, because time travel itself makes no sense. Plus, nothing in this movie is supposed to make that much sense anyways, considering that Deadpool's talking to the audience most of the time. Like, it ain't that serious, bro. Overall, I like the movie. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you're going to leave a spoiler thought or a spoiler comment, of course, put spoiler warning just as a courtesy. But hopefully those who made it this far, who have not seen the movie, won't venture down. Let's hope that they don't do it. That's the best way to avoid these things. Thank you so much, guys. Hope you have a great one. And I'm sure we'll have lots more to talk about when it comes to Deadpool, because I really do wonder, when he was going through time, did he erase the events of Logan? Is Logan now, with the death of all the X-Men, Professor Xavier and Logan, spoiler, is it over now? Like, did that not happen? I don't know. We'll talk soon. Have a great one.